Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Greater Napanee Committee of Adjustment for the 14th day of November 2023. Just before we call the meeting to order, I just want to remind everyone that this evening's meeting will be recorded and live streamed to the Town of Greater Napanee YouTube channel. Having said that, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll look for a motion for the adoption of the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Look for a motion for the adoption of the minutes for the Committee of Adjustment for the 24th of October 2023. Moved by Deputy Mayor Calver, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Land severance application. Land severance application. New lot PLCOR 2023-050-165-2703 Ontario Inc. with an address of 291 Kimmett Side Road, legal description concession 3 part lot 24 Richmond. Is there, before we get started, anybody here in the body of the council chambers to speak for or against? Yes, sir. Nothing to say unless we need to answer some questions. Very good then. Thank you, sir. And no one against, I sense. Seeing none. Mr. Nobes, you're up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Items 5.1 through 5.4 on the agenda are all associated with this site. There's a proposal for 3 new lots to be created and 1 lot addition. Item 5.1, if you're referring to the sketch, is for severed parcel A. Item 5.2 is for severed parcel B. And item 5.3 is for severed parcel D. And item 5.4 is relating to severed parcel C as a lot addition to the parcel that's identified as part 2, 29R8601 in the very northeast corner of the site. So the application, if I may, I'll I guess speak to them all sort of at this point in time, and we can go through them one by one thereafter. But I'll give a high level overview of each parcel, and then we can go from there if that works.
I think that's probably the best way. Thanks, Michael.
So severed parcel A is proposing to create a 2.1 hectare parcel right at the southeast corner of Kimmett Side Road and Goodyear Road. This parcel would well exceed the minimum frontage and area for lands in the M2 zone, in addition to severed parcel B. Severed parcel C is really a squaring up of after severed parcel A and B and D would be created. Parcel C is effectively essentially a remnant parcel, which would best be added to the existing separate lot in the northeast corner of the site. So it would really be squaring up lot lines and make for logical parcel fabric in the area. The retained parcel is slightly awkward in shape. It's in that configuration today. There are intervening ownerships west of the parcel. You can see it's a flag-shaped lot. There's ample frontage for this retained parcel to gain access to the balance of that 12.2 hectare parcel. What's not shown on this image, however, is on if you can see part 1 sort of in that retained parcel, sort of in the southeast corner, I'll say part 1 on 29R8601. That parcel is actually merged with this parcel now. At the time of this sketch being created, it was still a separate lot. It's now under the same ownership, same legal entity as this parcel that's under consideration. So it's actually merged. There is a stormwater facility that services this site, and it crosses into part 1, and it's basically split between the retained parcel and part 1. What staff had a slight concern with is the proximity of the northerly limit of that existing storm pond in relation to the proposed lot line at the north end of the retained parcel. By creating the severed parcels on the northerly end, it really gives that opportunity to reduce that storm pond size. So we've imposed conditions or recommending conditions to require updated site plan drawings, stormwater management reports that would justify shrinking that pond size, since each severed parcel would need to deal with stormwater on their own site. this would give better vehicular access into that retained parcel. So we're recommending that as conditions for the lots fronting onto Goodyear Road, in addition to the parcel to be severed as a lot addition. Severed parcel D is really following the existing fenced in area on the site. So it makes for logical lot lines. The fencing is already there. It's already functioning appropriately. There's already stormwater management facilities in place to convey stormwater from that site. It makes the most sense from the applicant's point of view and from staff's review to effectively follow those lot lines around the fenced in area, which would effectively create parcel D. And parcels A and B line up well with those proposed lot lines. So all in all, staff are supportive of the proposal and are recommending approval subject to the conditions as noted within each item on the agenda here through items 5.1 through 5.4.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Michael. Does anybody have any questions of Michael with respect to this application? Go ahead, Councillor Pennell.
Through your worship, thank you, Michael. With part 2 of 29R 8601, is this the same owner as the applicant, or is it a different owner?
So part 2 is owned by the same entity effectively, but that was a parcel that was created with consent historically. So once a severance, always a severance. It had merged on title, but it can be recreated, and I believe the applicant can confirm, but I believe it has been recreated effectively. So since that consent approval was given previously, although it had merged, it can go back essentially. So in all instances, we should be reviewing it as a separate parcel today because there's that ability to recreate it, and that's the intent.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pennell. Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a recommendation before us that the committee receive for information the technical report regarding application PLCOR 2023-050, and further that the application to sever a 2.1 hectare parcel be granted subject to the conditions that are before you. Moved by Councillor Pennell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. And we'll go through these 5.2, 5.3, but I know we've heard probably most of the information. So 5.2, land severance application, new lot PLCOR 2023-051-165-2703, Ontario Inc., 291 Kimmett Side Road, legal description, concession 3, part lot 24, Richmond. Go ahead, Michael. I think we've already heard all the information, but if there's anything more, you're more welcome to add to it.
Thank you, Worship. Nothing further to add.
Is there any questions from council with respect to this application? Seeing none, we've got a recommendation that the committee receive for information the technical report regarding application PLCOR 2023-051, and further that the application to sever a 2.1 hectare parcel be granted subject to the conditions that are before us this evening. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Martin. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. And finally, I think 5.3, land severance application, new lot PLCOR 2023-052-165-2703, Ontario Inc., 291 Kimmett Side Road, legal description, concession 3, part lot 24, Richmond. And once again, Michael, is there any further that you can add to this?
Nothing further. I will just clarify, and there's a slightly different condition to be imposed on this application. This parcel used to house greenhouses on the property. Within those greenhouses were sanitary drains, so floor drains effectively to capture overflow water from watering. Those had not been properly capped to avoid rainwater entering into the sanitary system unnecessarily. So what we're recommending is impose a condition that those services be capped such that we don't have unnecessary stormwater entering into the sanitary sewer. I understand that the applicant has actually already undertaken this work, but we're recommending that it stay as a condition just to ensure that we're satisfied with the work that's been completed.
Great, thanks, Michael. Is there any questions or comments with respect to that? Go ahead, Councillor Hicks.
Through you, Your Honor. And maybe this is actually a question for the applicant. Are the greenhouses still there? They've all been removed. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Counselor Hicks. Is there anything further? Seeing none, we have a recommendation that the committee receive for information the technical report regarding application PLCOR 2023-052, and further that the application to sever a 3.2 hectare parcel be granted subject to the conditions that are before us this evening. Moved by Counselor Pennell, seconded by Counselor Hicks. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. And now I think we're at the final one with respect to this property. Land severance application lot addition PLLA 2023-053 1652703 Ontario Inc. 291 Kimmett Side Road, legal description concession 3, part lot 24, Richmond. And again, Michael, I know we've heard a lot of the details. Is there anything further?
Your worship, nothing further at this point.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments or concerns from Michael with respect to this application? Seeing none, we have a recommendation before us that the committee receive for information the technical report regarding application PLLA 2023-053, and further that the application to permit a lot addition of 2.3 hectares be approved subject to the following, or to the conditions that are before us in the agenda this evening. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Land severance application lot addition PLLA 2023-056 S&K McCaffrey 888 County Road 8. And go ahead, Michael.
Through your worship, the application before the committee this evening is to permit a lot addition from one large farm parcel that's being actively farmed on a portion of it, adding the currently actively worked portion of the farm to an abutting farm property immediately to the west to enlarge that land holding to the west. Typically in these instances where you have a farm property with a residence, and there would be a lot addition of the farm land elsewhere to effectively offload the residence, you'd like to see as little, I'll say, residential land left over, so the house and a small amount of property. In this instance, it's slightly awkward because the sewage system serving that house is located very far afield to the north, actually in part of the field on this property. It's not shown on the sketch, but it's identified in the sewage system documentation within the agenda. So that would need to stay with the property. So that's effectively setting that upper northerly limit of the property, of the proposed retained parcel. So given that constraints, if that weren't in place today, staff would recommend that northerly lot line come down and be able to convey that field effectively along with the balance of this land to be severed as a lot addition. But given that the sewage system is effectively right in the middle of that, we're hard pressed to recommend otherwise, given the constraint. So given that, staff are satisfied with the application and would be recommending approval to the committee, given that constraint associated with this site in particular.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Is there any questions or comments with respect to Michael's presentation or the application? Seeing none, we've got a recommendation that the committee receive for information the technical report regarding application PLLA 2023-056, and further that the application to permit a lot addition of 26 hectares approved, subject to the conditions that are before us this evening. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Pennell. If there's no further comments, questions, or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Minor variance application. We have a minor variance application PLVAR 2023-055 Goodyear, Canada Inc. 388 Goodyear Road, legal description, concession 3 and 4, part lot 27, 28, 29, Richmond. And go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, Worship. I believe we have two representatives from Goodyear that are on the call. And what I might do is at this point, I'll pass it over to the personnel at Goodyear just to give the committee a very high-level overview of what's being planned for the site, and thereafter I can get into the more detailed aspects of what relief the site would require from a zoning perspective to facilitate the contemplated development. So I believe we have Marty Burgess, and the name is cut off on the screen here, but I believe a representative of the consulting team that can assist Goodyear as well.
Rushin.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. Who wants to go first? Marty, were you going to go first, or were you going to let?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to go first, actually. So first of all, folks, thanks so much for giving us the time to meet with you tonight. I know how busy everybody is. For those that haven't met me yet, my name is Marty Burgess. I'm the manufacturing director out here at the Goodyear plant here in Napanee. Quick story about myself. I'm homegrown, grew up here in Napanee. Actually, my grandfather started Martin's Bus Service. My dad started Burgess Transit. And I grew up on a farm out on Beechwoods Road. And, you know, I can remember years ago when Goodyear first came to Napanee and all the excitement that went with that. I remember sitting around the kitchen table with my grandfather and him telling me about, you know, the good jobs and the good income and how people will be able to support their families. And most importantly, how the community could grow. So a lot of excitement. And I think we all remember that from the old days. But I will say this, 28 years ago, I started here at Goodyear Napanee as a mixing technician. Today, I'm the manufacturing director. And not only have I grown, but the plant's also grown. And although we're still in the planning phase right now, we really appreciate your support and everything you've done so far for this plant, this community. So thank you so much. I think Rushin's going to go over some of the technical details, but just before you get there, Rushin, I can't wait to stand in front of this team. And this is the best team in all the world when it comes to Goodyear. And to stand in front of them and say, hey, it's time to grow again and bring that excitement back into Napanee and this community and the surrounding area as well. So phenomenal opportunity for this plant and for this community. So Rushin, take it away.
Thank you, sir. Just for the record, sir, can we get your name?
Sure.
Good.
Go ahead, Rushin.
Yeah, that was Marty. My name is Rushin Kakaria. I'm with Walter Fady. We are the engineers and architects for this planning phase, assisting Goodyear with advancing a potential expansion on this property. There were some drawings that were submitted with our application, and I would like to just take a moment to quickly walk you through what was submitted and what this potential expansion could look like. So just sharing my screen really quickly. Just as soon as you're able to see that, please let me know, and I'll continue.
Yeah, I think we can see that.
All right, perfect. Yeah, thanks. So on the screen is an overall site plan of what existing building looks like. That is in gray, existing building and parking, and what the new additions to the site could look like. So all in, we are planning an overall expansion of Goodyear's manufacturing capacity with this development. So the current plant functions from an east to west fashion. There's various different elements that go into the building. In each building, sort of from east to west, is how their production line flows. So we have new expansions proposed, and they also add capacity in that same manner. So while they look disjointed in nature, they are adding capacity at various different processes within the plant. So they are labeled on our plan as the mixing, which is what Marty started as mixing technician. It's addition to their mixing building, the extruders and cutters, tire assembly, curing, final finish, and warehouse. And essentially, they do what the name sounds like. Start from the raw materials on the east end to warehousing finished product on the west end. To support the potential building expansions, we have expansions to the parking that is also proposed. So new jobs as a result of these expansions require additional parking on site, and the current parking is in the front yard. We do have some plans from the 80s when the original building and original site was envisioned, and they left room for parking on the north side. That's what we are growing into to add additional parking capacity to facilitate access to all these additions on the backside. We have a new roadway that replaces what was there today, just further south, because the new existing roads will be captured, covered by the building. Other than that, I understand we'll get into a little bit more detail about what the relief is being sought, just to preface that, there's a reduction in parking that's being proposed, and that's because we worked with Goodyear to understand what their parking needs are based on current jobs and future jobs, and related that back to what is in the zoning bylaw. And because this is a manufacturing building, most of the building size is actually dictated by the process itself. And if you just apply the strict bylaw, we'll be overbuilding parking quite a bit more than what would be required. So that's one of the areas where we're seeking some relief. Another one is parking in the front yard. That's where the parking is today. The zoning bylaw does not actually allow for it. So that's the second piece that tied into this application. Because we're asking for a reduction in parking, we're also reducing the amount of accessible parking that is being provided. Proportionally, it's the same, just the overall number is smaller than what's required by the zoning bylaw, just by virtue of having less parking spots. And then the last piece is the building height. Again, like I mentioned, as a manufacturing building, the building itself is essentially a shell over the process. The mixing building is a tall process. It's a vertical thing that goes from top to bottom. The height of the building is what is respecting the process there, and it's the same for some of the other areas where I believe the zoning bylaw allows for 12, and we're proposing 14 just to fit the process. That's underneath it. I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you have on this. Just want to
great.
breeze through this quickly.
Yep, great. Thank you, sir. We'll get you to come back onto the screen there, and we'll see if council has any questions for you. So there you are. Okay, does council have any questions with respect to this variance application? Go ahead, Councilor Purnell.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, this question's actually for Michael. We'll probably start there if you can help me. How does this work with approvals, with it being in two different municipalities?
Through your worship, so each respective municipality has slightly different zoning provisions. So the proponent, so Goodyear, has reviewed their project with the understanding of where the delineation between Stone Mills and Napanee is, and is applying the increase in floor area on each side of that line respectively, and determining the areas of relief required. So there's a concurrent application actually going to Stone Mills Committee of Adjustment tomorrow night, seeking the same areas of relief in slightly different magnitudes, given that Stone Mills, the portion of the building in Stone Mills is lesser than in Napanee. So our requested areas of relief are higher in magnitude in some instances, and vice versa. But as was alluded to, staff are certainly supportive of the requested amendments, given that it's a very tightly controlled manufacturing function. They're very good. There's a good level of confidence around how many individuals are going to be at the site at any given time, number of visitors. Although it sounds like a very large reduction in parking spaces, for example, a reduction of 137 required spaces, it's a very tightly controlled environment. It's very well set back from the road. If there is any, spillover parking that's required, if there's a large event, for example, there's ample room elsewhere on the property. It's a very large parcel. It's not like this, if this were an in-town property where, you have a lot of spillover into the right of way, for example, and having issues in that regard. In this case, that's not at all the case. So Of all the requested areas of relief that are before the committee this evening, staff are certainly supportive of those areas of relief. And my understanding is that staff will be recommending to Stone Mills Committee of Adjustment in the same regard too.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you, Councilor Brunel. Is there any other questions or comments from council? Go ahead, Councilor Brunel.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Michael, just one more question about the height relief. Could you tell us what we're looking for there, please?
Through your worship, so Goodyear has identified this evening that they're 14 meters in height throughout a good portion of the area to be added on our Napanee side. The request is for 38.1 meters of height allowance to Stone Mills, and that's for the mixer building, which is located in fairly close proximity to that imaginary line delineating Stone Mills and Napanee. Staff are recommending that we would give relief to 38.1 in case there are necessary modifications. If that mixer building needs to grow slightly across the line by a small margin, it gives that effective that pre-approval that wouldn't slow down the process down the road during permitting, for example. So it's giving a little bit of flexibility just for siting and accurately identifying that mixer building and the design thereof. So although there's reference tonight to 14 meters, staff are recommending to match up with the Stone Mills side at 38.1 just for that mixer building in the northeast corner.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Brunel. Is there any other questions or comments from council? Go ahead, Councilor Shank.
I'll move to approve the recommendation.
Great, thank you. We have a motion on the floor that that the committee receive for information the technical report regarding application PLVAR 2023-055, and further that the application requesting variances from the Town of Greater Napanee zoning bylaw Section 4.27A to permit a reduction of 137 parking spots, Section 4.27C to permit a reduction of 9 barrier-free parking spaces, Section 4.7I and 5.28.4 to permit employee parking in the front yard, and Section 5.28.2G to permit an increase in the building height of 26.1 meters be approved. Moved by Councillor Shank, seconded by Councillor Hicks. If there's no further comments or questions or concerns, all in favor of the motion? Opposed, motion's carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
This must be a very exciting time for you, and I know it's an extremely exciting time for our community. So thank you, and
Yes.
I'm sure in the not too distant future, I'm sure we'll be talking again. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, folks. Thank
Yep,
you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
And now we'll look for a motion to adjourn the Committee of Adjustment. Moved by Councillor Pinal, seconded by Deputy Mayor Calver. If there's no questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor of that motion? Opposed, motion's carried. Thanks, folks, and we'll see you for the regular session of council very shortly.